You ever pull into your driveway after a brutal day, head pounding from traffic? Shoulders tight from meetings that could have been email sand all you want? Seriously, is to hit that garage door opener and melt into your couch for 5 minutes of peace before the world comes knocking? That was me, Thomas Green, in what should have been an ordinary Tuesday evening. Only what waited for me wasn't peace. It was a white luxury SUV, polished to a mirror shine, just sitting there like it belonged in my garage. Not a driveway, not the curb-me-locked garage. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd lost it. Maybe I'd mixed up addresses or someone was in trouble. But no. No calls, no texts. Just those Texas plates and a vanity tag HOA mocking me from my own space. Yeah, that happened. That car? Everyone on Willow Bend knew it. It belonged to Patricia Vaughn, our HOA's iron-fisted president, clipboard queen, master of the passive-aggressive letter, breaker of neighborhood spirits. She'd made a career of wielding the bylaws like they were edged weapons. Trash cans 2 hours late. $75 fine. Lights up after New Year's? Another letter. Kids basketball too loud? Forget it, here comes Patricia. So I just stood there in the gloom. The smell of motor oil and cedar reminding me this garage was my refuge-me kingdom. And right then, that car felt like a siege tower breaching my gates. Then I heard her. "Oh, Thomas, you're home earlier than I thought." There she was, breezing up in her floral blouse, folder under her arm, like she was headed to another tribunal, her tribunal. I didn't even let her get a word in. "Patricia, what is your car doing in my garage?" She flashed this little half-smirk, tilted her head, and started with that syrupy tone she reserved for moments she expected compliance. "I just needed the space. Landscapers blocked my drive. Zoom call with the board. You don't mind, do you? You ever get so mad you laugh? That's what slipped out. You parked inside my garage. Not the driveway. Not the street. You broke in and just parked." She acted like I was making a big deal out of nothing. "Don't exaggerate, Thomas. I knew you wouldn't care. You're always reasonable." Like she was granting me some kind of compliment while standing smack in the middle of my boundary. That's how bullies do. They push until you snap, then call you unreasonable for bleeding. She tried to brush it off, but I wasn't letting it go. "Patricia, you crossed a line," I told her. Her face flickered just for a second. But instead of an apology, she puffed up. "Let's not use ugly words like trespassing. We're neighbors." I just stepped closer, phone in hand, thumb hovering over my garage app. "This isn't a community park. It's my property. You don't just get to take it." And with that, I hit the button. The heavy door ground shut, steel on steel, the verdict delivered. Patricia's eyes popped, voice cracking. "What are you doing?" "I'm making sure your little few minutes stay right where they belong off my property." The look on her face, let's just say for once, Patricia didn't have a comeback. But, of course, she didn't go quietly. "Thomas Green, open that door right now." Her voice shot across the yards, neighbors poking their heads out like prairie dogs. Janice from across the street was the first retired nurse, steel in her spine. "Patricia, what was your car doing in there?" Patricia started spinning, saying she just needed a spot, you know how tight it gets, blah blah. But the crowd was growing. Murphy's from the corner, Sophia with her twins, even Robert from his garage, wiping his hands on a rag. Someone finally asked the obvious. "How'd she get in? There's a keypad, right?" Patricia stumbled, muttered something about maybe seeing me type it in once, or maybe it was written down. But everyone saw through, itched, memorized the code, waiting for the moment she could use it to her advantage. Right there, in the middle of the driveway, years of pent-up resentment boiled over. Janice snorted. "Harassment? Patricia, you broke into his garage." Robert stepped forward. "You don't borrow someone's garage." The neighbors laughed, tension breaking. Patricia tried to spin it, blaming me for hostility and calling the crowd ungrateful. She'd always relied on fear, on people rolling over, but tonight nobody was rolling. It got uglier, her voice pitched higher, arms waving, her face redder by the minute. She tried to pivot, claim she'd always protected the neighborhood, but the stories started flowing. Robert fined for changing oil in his driveway. Sophia's kids threatened over chalk drawings. Janice getting dinged for a doormat that wasn't neutral enough. Every violation, every petty grievance she'd ever handed out became fuel. Then out stepped Mr. Douglas, Vietnam vet, cane tapping the concrete. I fought for people to have their property respected. You crossed a line, Patricia. Even she faltered at that. But pride's a stubborn thing, she snapped back. Accused us all of ganging up. But the spell was broken. I kept my tone level. Told her this wasn't about ganging up. It was about truth. She threatened to call the cops, phone in hand, daring me to keep her car trapped. I called her bluff. Go ahead. See how that plays out. She hesitated, weighing the risk because if the police came, she'd have to admit what she'd done. And deep down, she knew it. But Patricia, being Patricia, finally did it. Dialed 911. A few minutes later, 2 Dallas PD cruisers rolled up, blue and red bouncing off the brick. Officers Lewis and Moore, pros at crowd control. Patricia pounced. He's stolen my car. Locked it in his garage. The officers listened, then turned to me. I laid it out. She broke in, parked her car, expected I'd just accept it. They asked Patricia, point blank, did you have permission? She stammered, tried to deflect, but her silence said it all. Then the neighbors stepped up, one by one telling their stories, speaking their truth. Officer Lewis looked at her, then at me. Sir, do you want to press charges? Patricia whipped around, panic written across her face. I paused, let the silence stretch. You could feel the whole block holding its breath. Finally, I said, not unless she owns up to what she did. Here. Now. Patricia's face twisted, anger, humiliation, maybe even regret. For the first time, the power was gone. She was just another neighbor, stuck. The officers leaned on her. An apology goes a long way, ma'am. She muttered, I'm sorry, barely above a whisper. Louder, I said. And she did. I'm sorry I parked in your garage. I'm sorry I used your code. The crowd clapped, not out of respect, but out of relief. Finally, the bully had been called out. I opened the garage, watched her snatch her keys and hustle to her car. But before she could leave, Robert stopped her. Wait, she doesn't just get to drive away. We need to talk about what comes next. The neighbors agreed if we let her spin this, we'd all wake up to a letter blaming me for her humiliation. Janice stepped up. She apologized because she had to, not because she meant it. The officers, maybe seeing the writing on the wall, reminded us they weren't there for HOA politics. But Harold from the back called out, if we don't deal with it now, when will we? That was the spark. Talk turned to new leadership, real meetings, collecting signatures for a special election. Patricia tried to reassert control, citing the bylaws, her records, the accountability she'd supposedly upheld. But the stories just kept coming. $200 fines for grass length during drought. Threats over Christmas lights while I was caring for my sick father. Trying to ban Halloween because it attracted the wrong crowd. Her voice shrank with every new accusation. Every neighbor stepping out of the shadows. Even the Murphys chimed in. It's time for change. So I put it out there, voice calm but firm. Let's call for a special election tonight. The crowd was electric. Patricia sputtered. You can't do that in a driveway. Janice grinned. Funny. You had no problem running HOA business from your living room. Even Officer Lewis said, Ma'am, you've lost their trust. That's harder to win back than any fine you've ever handed out. Patricia yanked her car door open, eyes blazing. I leaned in, voice low. You can leave tonight, but when you come back, this street won't be the same. Your days of controlling people are done. She didn't reply, just backed out, the crowd parting in silence. And just like that, it was over. But not really, because the street was buzzing with energy plans for a new vote. Neighbors who barely spoke to each other now swapping stories, finally realizing how much had been taken from them under the guise of order. Janice came over, patted me on the back. Took guts, shutting that door. Maybe that's all it takes, one person saying enough. Robert raised his voice. Let's make it official. Special election. New leadership. The cheers that followed? That was the sound of hope coming back to a block that had lived in fear for too long. Sophia came over, thanked me for making her want to stay for her kids to grow up somewhere they could draw chalk on the sidewalk without fear. I realized then I hadn't set out to be a leader. I just wanted to reclaim my peace. But sometimes all it takes is one person drawing a line in the sand. Eventually, folks drifted home, the night settling back in. I closed the garage door, not to shut anyone out, but to mark a new beginning. I watched the taillights of Patricia's SUV disappear and wondered how many neighborhoods out there are waiting for someone to do the same. So maybe that's the lesson: boundaries matter, respect matters, and sometimes the smallest acts of defiance ripple out, changing everything. If you've ever had a Patricia in your life, someone who hides behind rules to trample your peace, remember, you don't need to yell or fight dirty. Sometimes all it takes is standing firm, saying no more, and letting the truth finally get its day in the sun. So what do you think? Did Thomas do the right thing? When does standing up for your boundaries cross the line? Does every community need an enforcer? Or do rules only work when everyone agrees on respect? I want to hear your story. Share your take in the comments. Let's get a real debate going about what community should mean and how far is too far when it comes to justice on your own street.